We're frequently told that Russia is going to go to war with us, that NATO has to prepare for war with Russia. Now, I would agree that we should always be ready for war with such an adversary. And I would agree that Russia is not our friend. Russia's worldview and Russia's view of history is not directly compatible with cooperative friendship in the long run while Putin's in charge. However, are we really kidding ourselves that he's going to attack? Now, I agree. Will he carry out a nerve agent attack in Salisbury? Hell yes, because we don't have any kickback, do we? Will he undertake cyber attacks? Yes. Will he fly drones over airports? Yeah. Balloons? Yeah. Will he use Belarus's border to push immigrants in to cause more problems as he sees that as a major weakness in Europe? Yes. Will he undertake actions that are against our interests? Yes. But an actual war? Do we really think Putin would do that? Now, Putin, he ran the maths on Ukraine and he thought, I can land a bunch of special forces just outside of Kiev. I can take Kiev. I can cut the head off the dragon without their leadership, and my fantastic forces will surge across the Donbass. I will be able to walk out of this with Crimea permanently in my control, which he believes it should be, and I think he truly believes it should be. That Donbass will be under Russian control, that probably some good farmland will be seized, maybe up to a good river that provides a little bit of border safety for him, and that a regime will be in place which, at the very least, won't stand against him. Effectively, a Transnistria solution for Ukraine. Because at heart, we have to look at why have the Russians always wanted to extend themselves into the West? Why did Stalin create spheres of interest where he created the satellite states of today? Why did Belarus get created? And I say created because it's a fabrication. Belarus, or White Russia, was one of the Russias, but it wasn't where this is. Belarus was constructed so that the eastern quarter of Poland could be taken. And then Poland was shifted west, and they added a quarter out of German land. Anyone who's been to Silesia and driven through any of the villages or towns there will very quickly see a German flavour, the buildings they see. Russia has long seen itself as a continental power, and they see themselves as a continental superpower, challenged by geography. The northern coast is ice-locked most of the year. The eastern coast is ice-locked and problematic and far away. In the west, there's nothing really from the Urals across the whole of the western plain to actually stop anyone. It didn't stop Hitler, it didn't stop Napoleon, and it wouldn't stop NATO. Now, obviously, we don't have an interest in rolling across that land and taking Russia, but there's the just in case. He's always wanted a barrier, a safety cushion. And he saw this in his calculation as a conflict that could provide that without escalating into something like major war. Now, obviously, a special military operation has been a catastrophe for Russia. I don't believe Russia is losing it, but they're pretty incapable of winning it. And It has forced Scandinavian countries into NATO. It has led to huge sanctions, made them a pariah amongst the pleasant thinking countries of the world, the progressives, cost him unknown damage to his economy, his army, his population, and won't achieve what he wanted to achieve. It will achieve some of it eventually. Now, having undertaken this disastrous miscalculation, do we believe that Putin is stupid? Because I don't think Putin is stupid. I think Putin is dangerous. I think Putin is malevolent. I think Putin happily misrepresents history. And I think that Putin likes to bully smaller countries. But does he really think he can invade Europe? I mean, when we say we have to prepare for war, we're saying that there will be a shooting war with a NATO state. So which one? Is he going to attack Poland? Well, the Polish Air Force is a lot smaller than Russia's. They've got roughly 100 combat aircraft against over 1,500. But they've got F-35s coming in. They've got strong, well-maintained F-16 fleet ready to roll with all the modern sensors. They would get instant access to Ridge Joint, to AWACS, to all of the combined operating theatre intelligence, which clearly has helped Ukraine quite a lot. There's no way that Poland wouldn't get more access. And yes, they don't have strategic bombers, but declaration of war on Poland would have to start with an attempt at air superiority. And whilst Poland itself might not have much in the way of long-range cruise missiles, or large transport fleets or strategic bombers, the NATO alliance would have those on hand within 24 hours. Russia's been shown to be a bit of a paper tiger. And NATO, whatever you think of it, is a well-organised, coordinated machine that doesn't want to go to war, but would respond. Crossing the border into Poland would lead to a war that would have to end with regime change in Russia. Putin knows that. He really isn't a stupid man. So maybe Finland. Well, Finland has small armed forces, and let's face it, I didn't even talk about the tanks, which the Polish tank force is one of the strongest in Europe, and would more than bloody the nose of the Russians. Let's look at Finland. Finland's a small country, but it's the country that held Russia at bay through the Winter War. When Germany and Russia, in combination, launched attacks across Europe, because they did start the war together in a coordinated attack. Let's be clear of that bit of history we like to overlook, because we then said they were our allies. The Finns held off the Russians until the Germans attacked the Russians and the Finns changed sides. This is a country with a very strong tank force, very strong artillery, well-trained army, and yes, a small air force, but they won't mess around. They may only have 61 fighters, but they are mainly F-18s. Yes, Russia has a much more substantial air force. 20 or 30 times more. But they wouldn't just be fighting Finland, would they? So it would be crazy for Russia to attack Finland, just as it would to attack Russia. Are they going to attack Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia? Well, same thing. Small countries that would have very strong support. I'm sure he'd love to broaden the Swarovski gap, but any attempt to do so would lead to the loss of Kaliningrad. And there goes their entry to the Baltic Sea. Remember, they don't have access to the Arctic. They have difficulties with the Black Sea. Okay, they have access to the Black Sea, but a NATO country, Turkey, controls the Bosphorus and can choose which country's warships to allow through. It's true that we should have stood up and spoken louder. We effectively had appeasement with Georgia. We didn't really say much with all the trouble in Nagorno-Karabakh. We didn't really say much with the trouble in Transnistria. Most of the new NATO members have every reason to fear Russia. They've got history books, and since the end of communism, they've actually reflected the real history. If you read God's Playground by Norman Davies, both volumes are full of reasons to not trust Russia if you're Polish. I spent some time in the Czech Republic, and I always remember going into a shop and somebody tried to speak Russian to someone who clearly understood it. And the guy said, "Speak English." And he said, "Do you speak English?" And he said, "No." But if he spoke Russian, he wouldn't sell to him. That tells me a lot about how Russian friendship is remembered there. Yet when we rationally think about war with Russia, we should be asking ourselves the question, why would Russia attack us? Because I can't see a world where the peoples of Europe would want us to attack Russia. They might want a very big wall, they might want us to not be very friendly, but to actually put tanks on the ground and planes in the air? I don't see Europe ever wanting to do that. So really, the suggestion is that Russia will attack. Well, Russia has every opportunity to mess with us. And they know that we won't attack them unless they attack us. That's why they carry out these little actions to annoy us. Because they know they can get away with it. So, what we're saying, what our leaders are saying, is that Russia is going to send tanks and planes and missiles, artillery shells and soldiers into NATO land. Or maybe they're saying they'll sink our ships. I think the Ukraine war has shown one thing, it's how perilously bad the Russian Navy is. So, sensibly, are we saying that Russia will attack us? Or are we saying that we need a war? I don't know what you think, let me know. Maybe I'm missing something. But subscribe, come back for my next grumble, and tell me what you think is likely to cause Russia to attack us.